I'm going to go back in time a bit for those who remember the 80s and late 70s. If you remember the Buggles, they released a hit single, and this is an earworm, this one. And, Video Killed the Radio Star, if you remember it. That was nearly 45 years ago. And that song bemoaned the end of radio-based stardom for musicians because music videos were hitting the scene. Well, it's getting near half a century since that song came out. And music-based radio stations, they're starting to fade away, but it took until now. And it's not video that's taking them out. It's streaming music options like Spotify that led to the change. And the stars aren't gone. They've just moved on to a new platform. I mean, even if every radio station was to shut down today, like her or hate her, Taylor Swift would remain a household name and would pack stadiums for her shows. Things have just changed, that's all. Musicians in the early 1980s who weren't willing to embrace videos, well, they were often left behind, especially once MTV became huge. So artists, though willing to change with the times, found videos provided a whole new platform to reach audiences. So rather than whining that video killed the radio stars, they actually found a new way to make money, and they did very well with it. Every technological change brings out people claiming it's going to wipe out jobs or destroy an industry. Now, while tech-inspired transitions can be disruptive and harmful, if an inflexible market is out there, but products, industries, they evolve, and jobs remain for those willing to do things differently. I mean, myself, I used to work as a surveyor in oil exploration. I've been trained in using a transit and a theodolite. GPS made that mode of surveying pretty much obsolete, and I had the choice to adapt or lose my job. Well, I adapted. Mechanized agricultural practices. I mean, they did put millions of farm laborers out of work. If you remember the Jode family and Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, they were initially displaced because of new tractors working the cotton fields. But while new agricultural technology caused a lot of social and economic upheaval for a time, should governments have tried to block the evolution or subsidize people to plant and harvest crops by hand? Technological advances have since increased agricultural production to the point where famine is rare in a world with 8 billion people in it. And the evolution caused pain, but it was worthwhile in the long run, and labor balanced itself out as people learned and embraced new skills. Now, getting back to the arts, stage performers, I mean, they feared moving pictures would wipe out their industry back at the turn of the 20th century, the start of it. Broadway's still going strong today. Movie stars, they feared television would wipe out their industry. Well, movies and the stars associated with them are still doing quite fine. Artists willing to flex were actually provided with a broader spectrum of performance options. Netflix, they began as a movie rental company. Actually, they delivered DVDs. Then they started a streaming service. Blockbuster, though, they were a movie rental company and they stuck to their guns. Well, Blockbuster went from an industry giant to oblivion, and Netflix is now worth an estimated $240 billion. Changes can hurt, and the transition periods can be messy, but the change is inevitable. People need to adapt to change rather than try to fight it. Or worse, people have to could try getting the government to fight the change on their behalf. And that brings us to the state of today's news media. Conventional news media has been in a state of steady decline for nearly 20 years now. The collapse of the industry has been accelerating, and the recent spate of layoffs in Canada by CTV sort of drove that point home. But instead of seeking rational ways to facilitate the transition of an industry in flux, Trudeau had a temper tantrum during a news conference, and he declared, "I'm pissed off." At what? How? How long does Trudeau expect a business to continue without a viable business model? Of course, it's a bit much to expect Trudeau to understand even the most basic of business or economic principles. If he hasn't caught a glimmer or sense to those issues, by now, he's not gonna. Trudeau's government's been pumping incentives and direct subsidies into legacy media outlets for years, and it's failing. I mean, ostensibly, they're doing it to save an industry deemed too important to fail. In reality, of course, he's more motivated in buying the love of media for his embattled regime. And he has bought a little bit of love. I mean, they're certainly holding the leader of the official opposition to account, but media outlets can't afford to operate under those outdated models. The layoffs and closures are going to continue. If anything, Trudeau's handouts to media outlets have made things worse. Legacy media outlets, they've quickly become dependent upon subsidies rather than looking at ways to adapt to changing times. And Trudeau tried a failed cash grab on social media giants like Facebook, and not only did it fail to garner any money, but it took away a means of drawing traffic to media sites, causing them all, whether large or small, to lose revenue. Yeah, he made it worse. Outlets counting on checks from Facebook, they're suddenly realizing that money isn't coming, and now they're starting to cut. Look, guys, print newspapers, they're not coming back to where they were again. People aren't going to pay for classified ads again. Families aren't going to gather around the TV to watch the evening news anymore. Those days are gone. The market isn't gone, though. It's just diluted. And people have so many new means to seek entertainment and information. We just don't need some of the services news outlets are trying to provide. They need to change. They need to flex. I can find the weather forecast for my area or anywhere else in the world within seconds on my phone. So why are TV stations still bothering with meteorologists on staff? That's just one example. I can go directly to websites to find information that I used to have to get from newspapers and broadcast outlets. Now, people still want to read, view, and listen to news and opinion, and they're willing to spend money to do so, as the Western Standard subscription model is proving. But the outlets need to be lean, targeted, and efficient now. No more giant buildings, no large studios, and no printing presses. As with every other industry, the news media will adapt to a working model, though many outlets are going to fall by the wayside during the transition. Subsidizing existing outlets is doing little more than animating a corpse at this point. As with most things, all the government needs to do with media is just get out of the bloody way. It's going to take care of itself. That's unfortunately contrary to the authoritarian nature, though, of the Trudeau regime. Let's hope the next administration knows how to back off.